know, surely we won't be found guilty. And she's like, it's like a ghost was on her face. She's like, no, don't you understand? And that's when, for the first time, as a 17-year-old, that's for the first time I believe my mother didn't look at me as a son who needed to be protected. She looked at me as the black man that society fails to protect.
Oh.
Not afraid, got that big.
What's going on, family? It's your brother Lawrence here with another episode of Watch God Work. In every episode, we get the distinct pleasure and honor to speak to a brother and sister that's doing exceptional work in every field of human endeavor, and they share their God story, the ways in which God has been at work in their life, and the ways in which God has been at work in and through their work. And today it is no different. I have my brother, our brother, Jarrett Adams. What's going on, King?
Hey, how you doing? Thank you for having me, man. I appreciate this.
Man, I'm grateful for you being here. And I always love the prelude, man, the conversations that lead up to this conversation. And already, I already feel goosebumps. And, when I learned about your story, that's how I felt. I think that for many people at a high level, they get introduced to the issues of injustice at quote unquote moments in history that I think that we're living in now, through Hollywood and through stories that they hear. But there are no moments when I think in the quiet time that you get a story, you read something, that there's no other noise. And then you're able to take yourself into those moments. And that was the moment that I had when I learned about your story. And it was not only the injustice in 1998, what you navigated as a brother that I see, that has my skin, that has a story, that has my disposition from the south side of Chicago with his friend, that many of us walk with friends. But then it was also the story and also the mission that you've given your life around criminal justice, around redemption in a system, around laugh after, giving people what does it look like for their lives afterwards, and being a part of not just in where you live, not just in the court where you have actually argued and won, but all around the country, you have looked to be of service to brothers and sisters, and specifically brothers who were in a tangle and who struggled and who had to meet the system in the ways that you have. And so, bro, I'm thankful for this conversation. I'm also thankful because there's another part of the story as we talked about, which is those letters. The faith journey. That I think people don't understand that sustain you. And so clearly I can't do it any better than you can do it. And we all start, who is Jarrett Adams?
Yeah. Well, look, man, I feel right at home just off the intro, but I'm Jarrett Adams. I'm south side of Chicago, born and raised, a kid, whose family origins came from Mississippi and migrated to Chicago, all in the spirit of, I want to give my child a better opportunity, at the fabric that is supposed to be what makes you an American, right? I want to, give my child an opportunity to grow up without, being subject to racism and prejudice. And I think that the belief was if you get out of the South, then, there are no more problems in terms of prejudiceness and race. And that's, as we know, just simply not the case, right? Mm-hmm. So, I was just a South Side kid. I didn't get into like gangs and selling drugs and shooting and all that. And it wasn't because it wasn't around me. It was just that, I was the youngest out of, my mother had 8 siblings and 5 of them were girls. So I had a bunch of older cousins and, I had a brother. So, I got a bird's eye view to see, the streets in action and how, no matter how big and bad you think you are, you don't walk away a winner, no matter what. So I just wanted a different type of excitement in my life. And so what I would do is me and my friends would we would stay out the way because the people who didn't get in trouble, you can pretty much go wherever you want, do whatever you want. You know what I mean? Like, you get mom, car, take off. Don't worry about having to come back. So we would stay out the way pretty much, right? And so me and my friends, I was just graduating high school. Graduated high school, and it was the summer between graduating high school and the fall semester. And that fall, I was actually going to attend junior college as a way to circumvent a lot of the cost and then make my way up, to a bachelor's degree. So I had always done well in school. And I don't want people, as I go on in my story, tell, people to think that, oh, okay, he went to the joint and they gave him a smart pill and he swallowed it and all of a sudden became a lawyer. No, brother. No. Our babies that they snatching off the street already possess this talent. You understand what I'm saying? And I was one of them. And so we go up to this party in the state of Wisconsin. It's me and two of my friends. We're all black. So it was one of my friends who had graduated the year before me. So he's like, man, this party, it's in Wisconsin. So I'm like, man, my mother and them ain't letting me go to no party in no Wisconsin. And they like, man, it's just right across the state. So I'm like, okay, here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tell them I'm staying over your house. And y'all tell y'all people you staying on my house, right? So we was like, man, bet. You know what I mean? Like we all got together that night. We drove to the party in Wisconsin. So it's a party. Like it was a party on this campus. They threw what's called like a pre-party. And the pre-party was before. So I'm not telling you anything. You know, Lawrence, here's the funny thing, right? This thing robbed a lot out of me. It robbed my experience of college. So when I be talking to certain people who know all about college, they be looking at me like, bro, you ain't got to tell, we know what go down in college. We were there. But that's also a reminder to me of just how much that was taken, So we're at this party. Look, there's drinking. There's casual sex. There's whatever you want to name at this party. And we were no different than any other kids there. Other than that, we were black. Okay? We were literally, the only 3 black men. We saw maybe 1 or 2 crossing through the party and stuff like that night. But we were the only ones that stood out. So this was a consensual encounter off of an invitation by this young lady that didn't even evolve into everything that was alleged because her roommate walked into the room and they started arguing about what was going on. So at the end of this embarrassing, because that's what it was. This was embarrassing. Like it wasn't, like I said, I kept harping on the wrong thing throughout this process because I just wanted my mother and them to know, y'all didn't raise me like that, right? But meanwhile, while I'm focusing on this false narrative that was created, they were focusing on putting together a panel of 12 jurors that didn't look like us so they can throw us away for the rest of our life. So now me and my mother, it's just us. Like we don't have resources. We don't have experiences with this. Like this is like, I knew all of the lyrics to Tupac, but I didn't know one constitutional right, at all. When they asked me if I want to talk, well, of course I wanted to talk. Because being raised by that family from down south, that's the one thing they tell you to do. You respect authority. So when they asked me if I want to talk, absolutely I wanted to talk. Absolutely I wanted to tell my version of events. And my version of events was supported by students and everybody else who was there at this party. But that's not how things work. And I thought that my experience with, law and order growing up as a kid was how I was going to be treated in this criminal justice system, and I wasn't. So I found myself falsely accused of a rape where it was just the accusation. And brother, I'm like, well, we didn't do it. So what else do what else do I get? I'm all of these things are swirling in my mind, as I'm going through this, and I don't know how to put together a defense. We don't have the money to afford an attorney. So we were appointing an attorney, and the attorney was not licensed for very long, and he was off of a panel list, and he told us that because the case lacked any credible evidence, he was going to go with a no defense theory. So me and my mother are listening to this, and I'm gonna tell you, I'm gonna tell you, right? Look, at the time that this was going on, my gut was telling me that this wasn't the right thing to do. But my mother, and I'm looking at, just the pain. And I just wanted it to stop, man. If this was the best defense, if this was what we were supposed to, do, if this was what would vindicate, this was what would bring the light to the case, then let's do it. Because I just want to stop this woman from coming up here, man. Because you know why? No matter what the accusation was, no matter that she knew it wasn't true, she knew who she raised, man, it was me who decided to sneak up there to that party. And I knew, right? I knew she wouldn't let me go. And I knew why she wouldn't let me go, because there was one name growing up in our house that we knew as if we grew up with him, and that name was Emmett Till, right?
Chicago.
So it was like, at a certain point in time, my mother was in pieces, and I couldn't understand why. Like I kept saying, Mom, look, don't you understand that this is a shift in narrative? All of these, the different inconsistencies and all. Surely we won't be found guilty. And she's like, it's like a ghost was on her face. She's like, no, don't you understand? And that's when, for the first time, as a 17-year-old, that's for the first time I believe my mother didn't look at me as a son who needed to be protected. She looked at me as the Black man that society fails to protect.
Oh.
And in that, we had a conversation. And she says, listen, when Emmett Till happened, my father, who was my grandfather, her father, was bringing his kids, up from the South, until he got the last one up. And that happened around the time where he would let the boys go back and visit with their cousins and friends. And so she said he pulled the plug on all of it. And they never really knew and understood, because my mother was a kid herself as this was going on and stuff like that. But when I saw the hollowness in her eyes, man, look, I knew this wasn't going to end well. I still had hope, but I knew it wasn't going to end well. And found guilty, literally nothing, no evidence other than, yeah, this happened. They did this. And that was all it took. And I initially got sentenced to serve 20 years in prison. But look, I could not, I told you, them giving me the time, me being found guilty, me spending and doing that time, that was still not the worst thing of the experience. The worst thing of the experience was for my mother to blame herself for not being able to afford an attorney and for not being able to save me. And since when has the Black woman not done everything in the United States and in this world in general, when you think about it? Since when? Both the seeds they give birth to, and after those seeds are grown, the ones that they love and seek out for marriage and unity, they're all under attack. They're all under attack. So when I saw her and I saw how helpless she was, man, it just made me, I said, you know what? I don't know the law, but I'm sure enough going to try. Because if that woman can put her faith and keep her faith in me and believe in me, despite the horrible accusations, man, I'm going to fight for this woman.
Bro,
and I didn't
I want to jump in here because this is so, you set the scene. You're setting this up. So you're just telling your story. You're just telling. But for me, I can imagine somebody right now who's listening and hearing this, that feeling of hopelessness and helplessness. And then for you to say the fact that you're saying that, it wasn't beyond the fact that I am sitting here looking at 20, right? At 17 years old, even beyond what I would be subjected to and what I have to go through separated from society in this way, the grief that you have about your mother blaming herself and not being able to resolve that, to say the goal was, the play was, she did everything she needed to do. She got it out the mud. So I can come here to make sure and take care of her. And so from that standpoint, you're now at this position now where you're like, yo, I see what's going on. I'm recognizing the pain that she's going in. I've been gifted with this intellect. I've been gifted with this stuff. I'm going to figure this thing out because I can't let her suffer any longer, right, from this, because she didn't cause this to happen.
Not at all. You know?
So, bro, like, I mean, so you're now at this moment where you're like, yo, God, no, I just need to figure this thing out. There's also this sense of knowing even before you even went. And also this sense of knowing. You talk about this moment of like, I felt like there was this ghost like on her face. Even before we kind of push forward in terms of what this looks like afterwards, is there this place of, did you have a sense, was the element of faith and like spirit dynamic beyond, that was kind of the sensitivity you had beforehand when you're like, you know what, I don't think I should go here. You know what, something's different about what was the dynamic of faith before leading up to that moment that kind of was with you to that point?
So this is what was with me. So, my mother and I, our relationship was a great relationship because she was the youngest of 8 kids and I was the youngest kid, so we had a good relationship and we spent a lot of time together. And she really set me up for this as a kid, because where most kids might have gotten spankings, my punishment was to read books and do a book report. you know what I'm saying? And back then, bro, I hated it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I literally hated it, right? But I think that she set me up in such a way, to be able to where I am right now. And so my faith, right, it was more like, she ain't tell me why, but there gotta be a reason, why I'm feeling like I shouldn't be taking this trip, and going up here, to Wisconsin, right? And it's what I realized as a kid was this, we live in a cocoon, right? We are, relegated to the south side and west sides of our whatever it is in your city. Just like there's a south side and the west side of Chicago, there's a side or two like those in every city, whether that be the east side of Detroit or whatever you want to name, right? There's a side like that. So as a kid, it's like going to a different country when you just visit downtown in your own city, because you don't go there. Black kids, they don't get a chance to get out and go and stuff like that. So I knew a lot of her reservation was just, it wasn't clearly articulated to, now let me tell you something. You think if you're doing the right thing, won't nothing happen. But no, this is like our history. You don't have to do anything wrong. So I've always, even growing up, my brother and I, we always, just hyper vigilant. And really what it is this, to answer that question, it ain't about being hyper vigilant. It ain't about being this. It ain't about nothing but PTSD. And I'm not talking about post. I'm talking about persistent traumatic stress, okay? Because our folks are raising us in a way that is a direct result of the terror and horrors they saw of people innocently doing nothing wrong. And it touches a lot of chords. We can think about this. Ava DuVernay, the 13th, it did a great job explaining to you, right, that slave catchers morphed into the police departments. And so my mom knew what it was, but I didn't know. You know what I mean? I didn't. I had a false sense of, looking at Law and Order, just thinking about it right now. I never saw an episode in the 90s of a wrongfully convicted black dude get his conviction overturned, and then they do doom, 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 doom. You ain't see that? No. They made it seem like there was no problem and the criminal justice system operated as it was supposed to. But that's not the case. It's simply not. And we were raised in the church, Lilydale, south side of Chicago, raised in the church, baptized. I like being baptized as a kid so much, I tried to do it twice, right? Like, that's the type of, you know what I mean? Like, we lived in the church. On Sunday, you can expect to be out your bed about 6, out the house about 7, and you probably ain't gonna be back to about 6 because you stand for all the activities, you eating there. Like, this was an institution where everybody knew everybody knew everybody's name and everybody kid. That's so-and-so, that's sister so-and-so kid, that's brother so-and-so, that's deacon, that's, that's the type of atmosphere it was. So our faith was never in question, which was why it scared me so much to see how scared she was.
Whew. The moments, right? I think that you talk about those moments of being able to see something that looked different, right? To say this woman of faith who has held down the fort, who I've seen, to some degree, right, out of this PTSD, almost stoically navigate the realities of all we had to navigate. When I saw her shook, it shook me up, and it shook you to movement. And so I think it now puts us in the situation now where you're like, okay, this is beyond this. And so this conviction happens and you're like, I need to figure this thing out. But you still are dealing with the harsh realities of being imprisoned, right? For 10 years, right? But you don't know that, right? You don't know all of these things. You don't know when things are going to shift. You don't know the Innocence Project. You don't know these things. And so as you're navigating these things, there's a picture of your touch points with your mom and your aunts. Like, so could you talk about just what you were going through while you were there? And then at the same time, what you were getting and what was the conversation with God as you were getting this encouragement and these prayers and touch points from your mom? And
So there was a sentencing hearing, and like I said, they initially sentenced me to serve 20 years in prison, but I stood up. They give you an opportunity to say what you want to say. And I stood up and I was just like, look, I'm going to apologize for being here and for all the families being here, but I'm not going to apologize for a rape that I didn't commit and that didn't happen. I said, I want to apologize directly to my mother, and because I just felt, this is crazy. I never thought that this would happen. Like literally while I'm sitting through the trial, I'm thinking to myself, man, I gotta clean my room up. Man, I know we're supposed to be doing, I'm gonna have to catch up with school. It's gonna be a lot. I'm literally not imagining ever that a case baseless with no evidence and just an accusation would get me 28 years in prison, but it did. So now, fast forward, I'm on a bus. And my co-defendant gets dropped off before me. And I'm wondering why. And it was because I got those additional 8 years. It pushed my security level up to a maximum / super maximum level. So I went I was 18 turning 19 at the time. This happened when I was 17. Trial's not till 18, and I'm pressing up against my 19th birthday, November, and I'm in an institution, and I make it to like really what would be considered, one of the worst of the 3 worst in the state. Walpond, Green Bay, and Boscoville, Wisconsin, those are the worst of the worst. So I get there and I'm like, one of these, man, you ever went somewhere and was like, man, where are the black folks around it? You know what I mean? Like, so, but in that sense, I wasn't asking, I was asking the opposite. Man, why are there so many black folks in here? That's what I said. How is it that the only thing of color in the courtroom for us was the defendants, the family, and the suits and the judge roll? So how do I make it to prison and it ain't nothing but black folks in the prison, but the officials and the people that we saw in the state of Wisconsin were mainly white? So it was like an out of body experience. And then when I got there, I stood out because of how young I was. So people would naturally ask, like, what you done did, or what you done, what you, like, man, you pretty young, how you get up there? Because if you up there in that prison, you definitely got more than 25 years, right? So that's why they look and they like, man, how does baby get, you know what I'm saying? What do you do, right? He must have killed somebody or something like that. So then I get celled up with an old white dude, right? He had been in there for about 18 years already for, serving, 2 life sentences, right? So you know, I'm there and you got to learn how to prison. And that's a term, you know, not many people are familiar and you shouldn't even be familiar with it. But this is the thing. There are politics within these prisons. So you got to learn how to prison. And it's like, that means to stay out the way, pretty much, right? Stay out the way. So my way of staying out the way was basketball, chess, and working out. That's what I would do. Basketball, chess, working out. Basketball, chess, working out. But what I realized was, for me, it wasn't just staying out the way. It was shelling off the world to numb myself from the pain that I was experiencing of being in it. So now I'm routinely basketball, chess, working out. Basketball, chess, working out. So my game improving, my physique improving, my chess game is Bobby Fischer like, but my growth is stunning. And my faith had took a back seat without me even acknowledging it. But it happened through my, you know, you just got to survive this. So what do I do to survive? Stay out the way. How do I stay out the way? 1, 2, 3. And not one time did I understand that in order for any of those 3 things to work, the first thing that should have been at the top was the first thing that I questioned, which was my faith. So I wouldn't be honest if I got up here and simply because of the platform that we're on, and we got a lot of believers that are going to be watching this, I would be doing God's work a disservice to sit up here and tell you that I believed him all the time and I knew he was going to do it. No, that's not. My story, I believe, is for you to see that you should never stop believing. That's why I did this to me, you know? So I'm in here with this old guy. And for about the next few months, I'm just playing chess, working out, basketball. There's a violent incident that took place in the prison. So some guys, you know, get into it. Some guy, you know, lost an eye or something like that. So they locked the entire prison down. So now they locked the prison down. And when they lock the prison down, you're in your cell 24 hours a day at that point. The only time that you get out is 3 hours a week to shower, 1 hour, you know, on that split weekday. It might be a Monday, Wednesday, Friday. This is, for them, they say it's necessary because for security purposes, they need to make sure it's an isolated incident as opposed to a riot that's about to, so I get it, right? So I want you to picture this. You're in a cell the size of a pantry closet, right? And there's a toilet there, there's a sink there, there are 2 bunk beds, and literally, you know, I can lay in my bed and my feet can hit the opposite end of the wall and my hand can touch the bars. If I stretch out like that. And I'm 5'10", I ain't 7'2", you know what I mean? So it's like, that's what I'm talking about, how tight we're in. So during this time, everything is done through your trap, right? So in Waupun, the phone system works that when it's your phone night, the tier runner will come by, give you the phone, and you talk on the phone, and you get the phone back or whatever it is, they'll pass it from cell to cell when it's your night, right? So even during this investigation, they still give you that, they still give you food. So I'm on the phone with my mother one night, and my mother, I still don't know how she was able to do this without the institution hanging up on everybody, but she clicked in. It's like a 5-way, man. It was like my mother, my 2, 3 aunts, you know what I'm saying? Like she would have church with me on this phone, right? And she would ask questions. And so when she's asking questions, she's asking these questions about my case, about the appeal, about my co-defendant's case, about this, about that. And so I'm answering to the best of my, you know, you talking about high school education, you know, from the inner city. So I'm answering it to the best of my ability. And so I get off, right? And my cellmate, me and this dude, literally, I say about the extent of our conversation for this month and a half of being in there was, you know, hey, you know, make sure you close the cell door, or I'm not going out for breakfast, close the door, or see you after work, or whatever, because he had a job in the law library. So now I get off of this phone, and I'm just, you know, I'm emotional as it is, so I just I'm about to lay down and tuck myself in for a book and just disappear for the night, start over new. Hopefully we come off lockdown the next day. My cellmate was like, man, look, you mind if I talk to you? And I'm like, yeah, what's going on? He was like, I just, I couldn't help but to overhear your conversation because I'm in here with you. This is the first time we really even had an extended conversation because he worked during the day. When he came in at 5, it was like, I'm in, that's correct. And I'm like, we sleep, we going, you know what I mean? Like, that's the day. So he's like, look, I'm just confused because, you're saying your case is messed up. There's problems with your case, right? And I'm like, yeah. He was like, but man, you literally get out here. I've never seen you in the law library. Like, you're out here playing ball, you playing chess. You know what I mean? Like, you work. So I'm just trying to figure out. I'm not trying to be in your business, but I'm trying to figure out. And I said, well, look, I got, my attorney is doing an appeal. And he was like, you talking about that appointed attorney, right? And I was like, yeah. He was like, yeah, that this like how they appointed you as an attorney at your trial, right?
Ooh.
I was like, touche. So I said, well, look, man, I don't really know the law like that. I'm just trying to, and he was like, well, word is you didn't really know how to play chess like that. But now I heard you kicking everybody butt at rec. So I'm like, okay, where do I start? So he's like, let me see what's going on and give me your transcripts and stuff like that. So when I went in my bin to get him out and give it to him, he was like, man, I can't believe this. And I was like, what's going on? He's like, dude, you didn't open any of this? And I'm like, no, what I had to open it for? I sat there while they railroaded me. He was like, look, young brother, he was like, just give me a second. Let me read this. So he went through everything. We're still on lockdown, right? Next couple days, he's reading over everything. We're not even really talking about what he's reading. He's just reading, making comments, reading. We come off lockdown like the next day. We come off lockdown. I returned to what I was doing. He took off work. He was just like, man, I just want to talk to you. He's like, look, I went over everything. He's like, everyone comes up to me to help them with their work. And some of these guys know good and well I can't help them, can't nobody help them, because they know they did it. You're like, you in here for some bull crap. It ain't not one piece of evidence in here. And for a second reading your transcripts, I thought your name was Black Man from Chicago, because that's how many times they referred to you guys as the Black Man from Chicago. So he's pointing out all of these things in my case. And he says, who was Sean DeMaine? And I'm like, I don't know, like, what are you talking about? He's like, well, who is this? So he gives me a little, like, it's like a little brief police report that says, my name is Sean DeMaine. I was at the party. I saw the black guys. Two of the guys, went off. I was staying with one of the lighter guys. That's me, because he was a white kid. He was explaining us by complexion. And then I saw all of them later on that night, and they were gone. And so, he was asking me, and I was like, oh, yeah, I remember this. I was playing video games and stuff like that. And he said, man, are you listening to yourself? And I'm like, what? He's like, look, these people accused you and your friends of sneaking up a flight of stairs, raping a white girl, and fleeing out the building like a scene from the 1900s. Don't you understand that this kid is literally a timeline of events saying that he was with you guys literally the whole time? And I said, man, well, I never really, and I got mad when he told me that. I said, well, how the heck am I supposed to know that? You understand? I'm a kid. How am I supposed to know that? And he was like, well, look, kid, you got a lot to learn. And the first place you need to go is not the rec yard. It's to the law library. So, look, I would like to tell you that I listened to him right away and I got me a notepad and went to the law library. But if I was doing that, I would be lying and I would be doing a disservice to my testimony. Because this next moment is going to preach for you and for everybody else. So I didn't listen to him. And I went out that next day. I had like 23 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists, right? During this time of lockdown, you could talk or whatever it is. You don't really get a chance to get visits. So it got to a point where after I learned the information in the case that he pointed out to me, I started to write letters, but I also started to become dejected and say to myself, if this man has been incarcerated for 18 years, can go on my case and find something that's glaringly indicative of my innocence, then are you telling me that the court system allowed this and they knew this all along? And that to me became scary. It became real. And I was no longer that Southside boy on his porch eating an icy cup, thinking that his world was perfectly fine. And so over the next month, I stopped responding to letters. I stopped calling, my mom, and man, I'm sorry.
No worries. Go on.
So now, I just became, I became dejected. I stopped responding to letters, and a guard came to my door one night, and this probably had to be going on like 3-4 weeks. But I just stopped responding to letters, man. I'm getting letters from our friends. They sending me pictures. They didn't have trunk parties. They going to school. And I'm sitting in here with a mandatory release of February of 2007. You understand what I'm saying? And this is now, actually it was 2020, like 2021 or something like that was my mandatory release. I was eligible for parole in 2007, and this was 1999 now, right? So I just stopped, I just didn't want to, it became too difficult to have these conversations continuously about, man, we just got to hold out hope, or man, we just got to, any moment we should hear this. And in any moment, it just became too much. And I knew I couldn't take away the pain, from my mother and stuff like that. So I just wanted to just, just not deal with it. And so a guard comes to my cell. He's like, man, we need you to come out here and go to this visiting room. And I'm like, what for? He's like, your mother's up here. And she keep calling the warden's office. So I'm like, look, my mother literally would not stop calling. My mother and my aunties would call the warden's office, to get them. So I go on this visit. And I hadn't seen my mother now. This had been this seems like, as I'm telling the story, it's so hard to tell every detail. That's why people can go get my book to go check out every detail. But the thing about prison is this, it doesn't necessarily go slow. It actually goes fast. And that's the scary thing about it. Because your life is going like that, like the flick of a calendar. And so I seen my mother now for now, this was like going on a year for the first time. And man, it looked like she had aged 30 years, I came off of the visiting room, and I'll never forget. I would never forget what it looked like to see her face and those wrinkles and creases of anguish on her forehead, and her just saying, I'm gonna love you no matter what. And I believe you no matter what, because I know you no matter what. And I left off of that visiting room, and the next day when I walked to lunch, I threw my gym shoes in the garbage can because I stopped playing basketball from that very day. And I went to the law library and I started to learn the law. And over the course of 2 to 3 years, I was able to grasp the law well enough that I was litigating on behalf of inmates who were there and winning all type of sentence modifications and rule infraction overturning. And I drafted my own habeas petition. And when I drafted that habeas petition, I forwarded it along to the Wisconsin Innocence Project. They came and they visited me. They agreed to take my case, and they argued my case all the way up to the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals, where the 7th Circuit Court of Appeals unanimously overturned my conviction for the very thing, that witness statement. And that we found out through the litigation that they had withheld a 3-page statement from this same young man. And he provided clarity and context where he said, not only was I there when that girl invited his two friends up and himself, which was me and my two friends, I was also there in the smoking area when all of them came back downstairs after the argument with her roommate. So, brother, you tell me, how me and my friends committing a gang rape, right, and fleeing the building with this kid who we were playing video games with? We didn't know him. We just met him at the party. He wasn't our friend. He was a white kid who had told them that very day, the next day when they started investigating, he had told them what happened. And so do you think it was a mistake that didn't make it into our possession? No. They decided that they were going to write a police report that would be testified to, and that would be the same historical connotations that they've used forever to paint black men. Listen, right now, because of the historical nature in which black men were presented, if you say a black man did anything to a white woman or a white person in general, you automatically are robbed of your presumption of innocence that's supposed to be afforded to us through the Constitution. Mm. Whether you want to believe that or it's difficult for people to accept, whether white or black, it is most certainly true, right? It doesn't mean that everyone who isn't black is racist. That's not what it means at all. But I think we need to start acknowledging that these aren't just accusations and folk tales and stuff like that. This is systematic racism played out.
Brother.
So
no. This. I want those who are watching this and who are listening to this thing. I want people to sit in that for a little bit, man. I want that to breathe. I want the track to breathe. The reality of Dwayne's testimony, mm-hmm. the clarity, the uncomfortable truth that did not go along with the narrative and railroading, and utilizing a perfectly designed system for this outcome. And also on that end, there's like this almost Joseph narrative of like you indicate, this unlikely person who points out, fam, this isn't the way it needs to be. You going through a real human experience of being dejected by that. Your mother, even as one suffering, even as one taking responsibility for something that she couldn't really take responsibility for, affirming her love for you, and you feeling the pain of that, but also then that also spurring you, right? Even as you tried to get away, even as you tried to disconnect, I don't want to talk, I don't want to respond, I don't want nothing. She pursued you. And you were in that moment, you saw the suffering, but you also saw a purpose. You got motivated to move in this way. And so, like, to your point, right? I'm so thankful that you did pen this in Redeeming Justice, in the book, that I'm so excited that people will be able to get their hands on. But there's no other outside of putting this on screen and even like reliving this for people to understand the moment by moment suffering and anguish that you went through, how instrumental her encouragement, even those things that you didn't respond to, those letters, those prayers, and then her showing up and still affirming it in a real way. And so, bro, I wanted to make sure that people got all that in and also felt, even though they will never be able to feel that way, felt, what the furnace fire that's behind you in your work today and the work that you do right now. Because, brother, I'm just as like, for you, like, to your point, you talked about just the frustration of this. Like, how did you, was that moment once your mom came, like that dejection, was it like, did it just like, you know what, I'm good, I'm clear, right? Or was it still an active wrestle, but you just had some more momentum?
So here's the thing about it. It was still, a tug of war, but she knew that as well. But she also knew that I done sent him letters. That wasn't enough I got to go put the cables on him to get him the real charge of God. Like, look, we going to do this. And so when she saw me and I took off, she knew. So her and my aunties knew. So what they started doing from that point, they all three would copy a book of Psalms and send me a Bible quote every week, every other day. So I was getting bombarded. So every time I'm sick of this. I'm sick of it. They ain't ruling it. I'm sick of it. Adams, you got mail. The story of Job. I'm like, what the, you know what I'm saying? Like, what the fuck, man? It was them. You know what I mean? Like, they was them. Okay? Like, it was them. So I said, you know what? Because this is what really, really, you know, just made me go even harder. I started to read those letters from friends that I told you I wasn't reading and stuff like that. So my mother wasn't in her favorite seated church anymore. She wasn't going to church anymore because everybody know little Jarrett from the Sunbeam Choir, and you know Sister Adams, you know, with the boys who be, you know, on the usher board. You know, everybody know. You know what I mean? Like everybody know. You know his, you know, sister Scott. You know, her nephew. You know, singing the choir, and she made the best banana pudding ever in the church. So that's the type of. So you gotta understand. We gotta visit that as well. Why would my mother feel like she's so discouraged that she don't even want to go to church and talk about it in the sanctuary where it's supposed to be talked about and prayed on, right? She was just so drained, right? She was so drained. And, you know, let's just call a spade, you know, depending on what congregation you get, you know, will depend on what type of treatment you get. But that also in itself, you know, lets you understand that this problem that we have needs a holistic fixing. This ain't no one thing, no one part. No, it's them. Nah, it's everybody. Everybody needs to be involved with this. All the way from how we treat people who are accused of things to how we treat their family, you know, who are accused of things. And in that moment, when I heard that big hat wearing, peppermint passing woman wasn't in her favorite seat, man, it's on. I want my lick back now. Now I want my lick back. And I'm not going to do it with my fist. I'm going to do it with that pen. And I'm going to learn how you did what you did. And now I'm going to do it to reverse it. And that's what got me here.
Woo. Yo. This is like, yo, it's like what was meant for evil, man. What was meant for evil. You know, that fire that was meant to consume you and burn you in a cell, you know, in a jail cell of so many stories, so many narratives. It was turned. You turned that force and you brought that fire to redeem, to refine, to bring gold out of the garbage that they tried to think and position you in, man. This is why I think this is so important, because I think when I think, to your point, shout out to Ava. You know, when they see us, Brian Stevens' Just Mercy, the Innocence Project, in the multiple states that it is in, West Virginia, Wisconsin, what I think is so powerful is just like the evil that you witness not witnessing to you. Man. How you can't be consumed. It takes, because I think you kind of have heard this when you've seen this in issues of police brutality. I think people sometimes get frustrated when they see brothers and sisters saying, I forgive. And, you know, they're like, oh man, that's some nonsense, you know, bullshit. You know what I mean? Right. But it takes something outside of this world. Right. And so I'm kind of now even like, as you now have navigated that, right, to having it overturned and to kind of now seeing the realities of this. You know, you become the first who have been exonerated to now practice and also take on cases within the Innocence Project. You become that, and you start to do that. You can even do that within the same court that overturned. To people hearing it, who understand life, have gone through some things, but nothing of this magnitude. Still, I know it was a constant wrestle. So what did your conversation relationship with God become that allowed you? What are the tactical things that you would do that allow you those moments that like things come down, you come back home and you remember, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't consume you where you're like, you know what, bump this, you know, forget all this. This takes too long. I ain't taking this case. What was your conversation? What's your conversation about? What's your dialogue? What does it look like now to maintain?
Yeah. Well, honestly, what I learned through this is this. So I realized going through this, I had learned faith, but did not yet have it. You understand what I'm saying? I had learned it because I was raised in the church. Our kids are raised in the church. So we learn faith, but it's not until that faith is tested when you earn faith and you have it. That's it. So my conversations were why, to all forget it, to oh my God, let me stop playing with the radio and sticking my head out the window. God driving, you know, let the man drive and get me to his destination. He obviously taking me to the scenic route for a reason. So that's how my transformation was. And I'm telling you now, having, you know how they say, you got to go through it to get through it. So I'm telling you from the perspective now of, yeah, I'm here, which is why I did the book, because I want people to not forget. Do not look at me like how the court system looks at our babies. The court systems look at our babies and they say, I don't want to hear nothing about how he grew up. They all got the same story. Whatever crime it was, he did it. I'm gonna sentence him. They look at our babies as if they were born at the scene of their crimes. So I ask that people don't look at me as if I was born an attorney, because I wasn't. And don't look at me as if my experiences are all those as an attorney, because they were not. Like, that's why I did the book, for you to understand. And as I'm talking as well, man, my faith was earned, okay? And when you earn something, when someone gives you something, you may value it, but you don't value it as much as you earn something. Then you value it. You understand? You ever got your fresh pair of L1s you earned and bought on your own, and you got the toothbrush out, you cleaning them up. You know, mama buy you some shoes, you out here running with the laces open, busting them open, buy some more. You know what I mean? Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. My faith was earned. So when I earned it, it was earned through the testing of it. So why on earth would I give it up? So when I'm going to these courtrooms in these different states, in these southern states, and one of the things people say to me, you know, when I speak, when people see, it's funny, because when people see me, you know, they just, I don't know what they assume, to be honest with you. Some of what I think they assume is, you know, here's a fair looking dude, you know, he in the suit, you know, he got to be an entertainer or something like that, right? You know, or if he's an attorney, then he got to be like one of these big corporate tax attorneys or something like that, you know. But then when I start to talk, right, when I start to deliver, that's when people from the gallery get to chasing me out the courtroom after and be like, man, can I get your card? You know, can I get your information? Because it's something that they're not used to. But that in itself is now what's driving me now. Why come you not? How come our babies can't do this? Tell me why. You know, if they can become rap stars and through viral ways, because each and every day they get up there and they trying to figure it out. How come we can't put young black attorneys in front of them like this to inspire them to do the same, right? And then along with, not saying we excluding what the young talented artists from Chicago who come up, the Chief Keefs and all of that. We're not saying we don't want that, but why come we can't have both? How come we can't have Chief Keef and Jarrett Adams? How come we can't have Lil Bibby and Lawrence? You understand what I'm saying? That's all I'm saying. So I just, you know, my thing is this, you know, I don't try to make everybody, you know, have my faith, you know, or anything like that. But I'm telling you right now, you know, this ain't luck, man. I ain't never went to nobody's casino and walked out having to be able to retire. Never in my life. I ain't never had a scratch out card. People be like, don't forget the Mega Millions at 600 million. Man, stop, man. God ain't got that in me. God want me to work, okay? He ain't make me rich to go retire. It's something else. that he has me to do, which is why I'm still here. There was something else that he had in store for me, which was the reason why I ended up here, because I wasn't what they want to label as the bad kid. I wasn't that. I was graduating from school. You know, I had a job. I was on my way to junior college. So he wanted me to not do something because he has something else in mind. And I think this is the only way to get my attention. This is what I'm telling you. I'm telling you this from what my godmother and my aunt and godmother. My aunt is my godmother. My aunt Josephine, her name is Sugar. Her name is gonna come up in the book. Sugar, my other auntie named Honey, and my mother name is Peaches, all right? So don't y'all be talking about my mother. And country folk watch this, y'all know from down south, all y'all got the name. My other auntie named Lucy, all the type of stuff. I got an uncle named Sonny Boy, okay? So y'all know what I'm talking about, right? But, so now, you know, she says to me, my auntie started to like keep me busy because she would write the letters, but she would send me the Chicago Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune. And so I asked her, I'm like, you know, auntie, look, I appreciate this, but this kind of costs a lot for you to keep this subscription for these two newspapers coming up here. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have to do it. She's like, no. I'm doing it for a reason, baby. I'm like, why? She's like, because I want you to understand something. You keep saying, if God, why God, I'm in here. But each and every day when I get this paper, I see one of your high school friends or somebody in the neighborhood killed or in jail for the rest of their life on federal cases. So you got to understand, sometimes he got to get you out the way of yourself so he can do what you are intended to do on this earth. You hear what I'm saying? Sometimes he got to get you out your own way so you can do what he intended you to do on this earth. That was her strat. That was her thing. Because I kept wondering, I'm like, man, these papers, I'm looking at the cost. Like, this is 2000 now, right? Whereas like papers are still hanging on, but they're still there, right? This wasn't days now. So they were expensive. And she would, I'm paying for this. I want you to see this. And sure enough, you know, I'm looking at my buddies. I'm looking at, you know, my friends, and they're being picked off. And, you know, I'm looking at right now, what I'm looking at is everybody, you know, who's looking at this, they're going to know the series Snowfall, right? Right? But let me tell y'all something. Don't forget about the remnants of Snowfall, because we are still in the remnants of Snowfall, right? And here's what I mean. I'm an 80s baby. So 80s is when the crack era placed the noose or replaced itself as the noose on the neck of the Black and brown community. So as a kid, and people are coming up missing, the adults would be like, oh, so-and-so went down south to go live with so-and-so. Nah, so-and-so was locked up. That's what so-and-so was. He was locked up for selling dope or something. And then there were people being killed. There were disputes. There were times where, you know, my mother would just simply leave the back door open and yell our names. You understand what I'm saying? But now that was changing because people were looking for ways to feed their addictions. They were doing petty crimes. People would walk in on them, breaking in their garages and end up dead. And so my Southside community, man, I watched it, you know, from the front stoop, like I said, with that icy cup. Like I watched it transform into a scene from New Jack City. So as I'm looking at this, and now I'm growing up as an adult, now I'm looking back at this, now I can tell you for sure. So when the adults came up missing and they told the kids, oh, they was down south, they were really in prison. So when those kids needed a parent, they went where? To grandma. So now grandma raised them. And grandma, you know, grandma about that business. Black grandmas back then was about that. You can throw a rock if you want, and they gonna come out and whoop you. And then when your mother walking home from the bus stop from work, they gonna tell her you're gonna get another whooping, right? That's the type of community that we had before Snowfall hit us. So now grandmothers are having to raise grandkids, and then you just do the math. Fast forward to where we are right now. Lawrence, I want you to tell me who the grandparents are. Some of the grandparents are the ones who were directly affected by the crack era, whether they were strung out or whether they did prison sentences or whether they suffered as victims of attacks from remnants of Snowfall. So I love the show. So I'm not saying anything disparaging against the show. Watch the show, but go do a book report afterward on the remnants of Snowfall.
Bruh, I think that's full circle. And I think that's an illustration that I think people can understand and get, like, who are the grandparents now, right? Well, right. I think when you look at that 80s baby here, you recognize that. I was, this is so timely, and I appreciate this because part of conversations, and I talked about the strange fruit of what happened before, the genius evil, I call, of our system. It's evil. Right? We're seeing the fruits of it. We're living the fruit, the strange fruit of it, so to speak. And I think that the great thing is that, one, there have to be people with the megaphones who's calling out the connection. And two, I think there also has to be, real tangible work. And I want to say this even as we get to this place, because I think that you've just done. You've dropped so many bars for people. You talked about things happen at the state level, right? At the same time, you're traversing, right? You're working on a case, a Waverly case, and an eerie story, where now you have law enforcement, death there. And so you see the incentives and the interests around this not going the way perhaps it's supposed to go from a justice perspective. Now as you kind of were thinking about the work and doing work like this, just, how do you remain focused and not get overwhelmed? Because that's not the only case, but that's one that you're working on right now. How do you make sure that you choose? And then what are the things that you're learning in this process around your strategy moving forward around your work?
Yeah. So, the whole idea behind this is this, and I said this to you before in terms of like our babies, man, that should be everybody's focus right now, because look, everyone should be focused on getting people out the boat. I'm not saying that that's not important, but we also should be focused on grooming our own candidates. Okay. Cause see, here's the thing, right? Our babies are directly under attack, and they're not under attack simply because that's just the population to attack. They're under attack because that is the talent pool that is the potential replacement to our oppressors. So how do you stop that before it even becomes, a problem? You get them at the door. And so you got to think about it, right? How many loose guns do you see roaming around the affluent neighborhoods, right? And I'll take it a bit further. So I go hang out, with different sets of friends. And, I remember hanging out with some friends with my wife and stuff like that. And I'm like, man, you know what? I'm about to walk to the liquor store, man. We having a good time. Let me get some more wine. They all looked at me like, walk? I'm like, yeah. They're like, man, liquor store walking. I got in the car that night and I thought about something. I said, man, not only was it strange that they were like, man, looking at me like, man, no liquor store's in walking distance, but why do they believe that would be a far-fetched idea for me to think? But then I got it, right? Think about the affluent areas. You see Newport billboards in affluent areas?
Nope.
You see 8 Ball, you know what I'm saying? A Slit Smart Liquor, you don't see that, right? But when you go to our neighborhood, they could blindfold me, spin me around 30 times, make me walk, and I'm gonna hit a liquor store or a church. You see what I'm saying? So I say that to say this, right? It's our duty, it's our responsibility to properly carry the torch for the ones who walked across that bridge getting sprayed with water hose, for the ones who got dogs sicked on them, for the churches who got firebombed. That's why the churches today need to step up. If you don't want to do it for yourself, if you don't feel compelled for your congregation, feel compelled for the people who died to allow you to have the right to be you today.
So word, I think there's no better way, I think, to even close, because I think that there's an exhortation. You kind of people know, and they hear in the tradition, to ever sit under the words, hopefully God inspired, gospel inspired words. But it's not so much.
I want to say this too, before I close, because I hope you have me back when the book is out, right?
Bro, of course.
This is what, to answer your question about the fire that burns in me, is this. Look, my mother has never not reminded me of how lonely that island was for us. You understand what I'm saying? It was lonely. She couldn't be herself all the way. She was in prison just minus the bars. So I get this law degree, and I remember taking it to her. I remember her just, she just tearful, joyful. She hanging it up like it's a photo album. And I'm like, what's going on? I thought we was, she like, no, I'm not. I'm joyful because I know that you're not just about to go out here and make a lot of money. You're going to go out here and you're going to be a savior to some other mother who don't have enough money to afford her son justice. And that has stuck with me forever. So now what I'm doing right now is this. See, there was a time when they said hip hop didn't, it had a limited shelf life, right? And they said this because, all the cussing the hip hop, it was mainly black. But then kids started to emulate that, and it started to transcend different generations and different races because it was cool. That's how I'm trying to make the law. I want to make it look cool for our babies, for them to understand, man, that they have the power. They got the power, they have the potential, they have the talent. So we need to protect their road so that they can travel to become the replacements to our equality oppressors. Thank you, brother, for having me, man.
Brother, man, I'm grateful. I think on behalf of those who seeing this and are listening to this, man, I'm thankful for you, brother. And brother, like we talked about, man, this is water under the bridge, man. Meaning the story is gonna get out there. We're all gonna do our part. But we're locking arms, man, because I think this is all our interest, not our vertical. This is all our interest, right? If one is not free, we are not all free. And so we have to all do our part to help move this thing forward. And I'm just thankful as well for the light that you allow to be seen of how God walked with you and how you navigate God. And just, I think your words around faith and just like there's difference between learning faith and like really having it. I think that's going to change somebody's life, like the moment they hear it. And so, brother, man, for that and much more, man, I thank you, man. All respect, all salute.
Thank you.
I pray that you do not grow weary in doing the good, and that God continues to strengthen you through your village, through your wife, through your family, and through brothers and sisters who you won't even expect will come out the woodwork and will lift you up in prayer and cover you and encourage you because they know that you're called to this work, brother. Salute, salute, salute. Thank you, my